welcome back to video number 6 in the AMT Corvette ZR1 video series. Let's get right to work. So I'm getting ready to do some assembly here, and starting in the beginning. So there was a part, and I want to mention this. This was loose in the box, and I left it loose in the box. I didn't prepare it because it wasn't mentioned anywhere in the instructions. Well, I have found it. So if you go to step 4, you'll see that there is this coolant crossover that gets installed. And that's all well and good. And then down here, you look at the completed engine, and there now mysteriously has appeared a radiator hose connection that connects from the bottom of the coolant hose crossover to the radiator. This part is never mentioned in the instructions, but shown in the picture on the assembled engine in step 7. So you go from step 4, which is final engine assembly, and it hasn't shown that part. It hasn't shown the part here. It hasn't shown the part anywhere in steps 1 and 2. So that part is not included anywhere. And then all of a sudden here in step 7, it magically appears. And this is why you fully study your instructions during your assembly and even before assembly. And look for variations in the pictures, because sometimes, especially with these older kits, sometimes something like that will sneak by you. Now, would it be substantial to the completed car? No. Am I going to paint it and prepare it? Of course. I have now discovered it, and I'm going to paint and prepare it. It took me a few minutes to figure out its orientation, how it goes, and it's still a little tricky. So this part goes like there. This will connect to the crossover tube, and then this will come forward and go to the radiator. And this will be multiple colors, because I believe that these parts, the hoses, are black, and I think that this part here might be silver, because it looks like some kind of a pipe or tube, or it might all be black. I haven't decided yet, but I'm going to prepare this part, and we're going to begin assembly right now. Angelo's Workbench is proud to announce that this video series is sponsored by 9stepsindustries.com. They have sent me some nippers and some sanding sticks, an airbrush, a cleaning pot, some cutters, some tweezers, a whole bunch of tools, and they offer all these tools for sale at their website, 9stepsind.com. That's 9stepsind.com. You can go there and shop and use code ANGELO20 for 20% off your order today. I've been using this stuff through the filming of this video series, and I am thoroughly impressed. Go check them out at 9stepsind.com, code ANGELO20 for 20% off today. So, getting on with some assembly here. One of the first things that you need to assemble is what they call the ignition module, which has to go right here. I'm going to use a set of these 9 Steps Industries pliers, or tweezers, to help me. Because if you don't put that guy in first, once you install the top here, you will not get that little guy in there. It'll be substantially more difficult. And a lot of people ask me about, do I scrape the parts, before I glue them? Some parts I do, some parts I don't. If it's a high-stress part, I'll scrape the plating and the glue and make sure it's a plastic-to-plastic bond. If it's not, I'll just glue it, because this little guy is never going to come off here. It's not a high-stress part. I'm never probably even going to raise the hood on this car, except, in the beginning to take pictures. And, occasionally if somebody wants to see it on the shelf, maybe they have one, they want me to raise the hood and take a look, sure. In which case, if they had a ZR1 and they came to me, I'd probably give it to them. I'd be like, here, this is a gift for you. Because I enjoy displaying them, but invariably, where do your models end up eventually? I'd be curious to know. Because I've built hundreds of model cars, and I don't have the room to display hundreds of model cars. Let's face it, we all have wives who have different decorating ideas than we have. If it were up to me, I would fill the house with model cars. There would be model cars everywhere you look. But it would be kind of weird And it wouldn't be great for when you have company, and my wife would divorce me. But, yeah, so we all have limited amounts of space. So I have maybe 50 or 60 model cars that I display in various areas, and I rotate them. But after I'm done displaying them, they go into a tote. So if somebody showed up here and was very interested in the ZR1, happened to see it on my shelf, and said, hey, oh, that's beautiful. I have a car just like that. You know, I would make a gift of it to them. And here, why don't you take that? That would be fine with me. I enjoy sharing my work with others. So here is a step 2 is completed. And now we will move forward to step 3. Step 3 is, as you can see here, the belt-driven accessories. And I have the parts gathered right here. And there is a little bit of detail work to be done here on a couple of these pulleys. The front of the alternator, I assure you, is not black. So what I like to do is I like to use Sharpies whenever possible, if I can get a fairly good-looking finish. So I'll pull out a silver Sharpie, and I'll say, okay, this pulley here, I want to be silver. And just like that. And then the front of the alternator, I'm pretty confident, is not black. Nor is the pulley for the alternator. And I did get a little silver on the black. And you can go back with black paint or a black Sharpie and touch that up. And I can do that after. For right now, we're gluing. So let me organize this the way it looks in the picture. So then the alternator goes here, just like so. So I'll get a little glue going. And we stick the alternator on there. It doesn't appear to be oriented in any particular way, so we'll just glue it on. And then right next to it, there is another pulley mount that has a little bit of flash on it. Let's see if that flash is going to affect us. Nope, not going to affect us one bit. So I'll put a little glue on here. And we'll stick this on there. That is looking the part. And then this large pulley here receives the power steering pump, which seems to have an orientation, because it has a half circle notch, and it goes just like that. That's pretty awesome. Little detail part here. For a model kit this old, this kit is pretty awesome. It's got some cool stuff in it. So there is the power steering pump clocked correctly. I just noticed a small piece of flash on the belt that I didn't remove. And there's that. So now this part is ready for installation on the engine. So we can take the final engine assembly, and then we can see where the two holes are for that receive the pulley system. And this one has a little bit of flash inside it, which is preventing me from fully installing the belt pulleys. So we just clean that hole out, and now it seats quite nicely. But it does seem to have a little something further in that is preventing it from going in all the way. And I believe it is part of the engine block. So what may have happened is in the manufacturing here, I've got like a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch gap there that I'm confident is not supposed to be there. That part should seat fully flush. So rather than worry about boring out that hole, what we can do is we can take our 9-steps nippers here, and we can just shorten this little locator pin to make it shorter so that it fits flushly just like so. Because you don't want to have any gaps in your parts, because then maybe that is going to affect the radiator, which maybe would then affect something else. And it's like dominoes. If you're off 1/8 of an inch here, it becomes 1/4 of an inch there, it becomes 1/2 an inch there, and then all of a sudden things don't fit the way they should, and you're in trouble. So now that fits completely flush to the block, which I'm confident is how it's supposed to be. And that looks good. We're in good shape there. So, I'm going to let this glue set up for a little bit, because we've glued a lot of parts. And then we'll come back and we'll take on step 4, which will include the magical mystery hose, which is not pictured anywhere in the instructions, but then shows up on a later detail photo. So we'll be right back. So now I'm going to glue on the headers. And there is some detail work that I will do on this afterward. I want to get these Corvette letters black like they're supposed to be. And I think that that would be about it. But for right now, what I want to do is I want to glue on these headers. So let's slide this over there. Let's get these headers glued on. And I've been test fitting in the background these parts, so I know that they fit. And will mate up to the exhaust system when it installs on the car. I saw that header flop over. The joys of gluing headers, and that's one of the reasons why I like using this this Fowler glue, the 170492. It has a tremendous amount of stickiness. Ordinarily, you can just stick it and hold it for about 15-20 seconds, and then it will stay until the glue cures, which is very nice. So now what I like to do is, just to be certain, I will go and out of the parts, we'll grab the exhaust header, just to be certain that it's going to line up when it's on the car, because, I mean, that's what it needs to do. It needs to line up when it's on the car. So if it's not going to line up now, then it's certainly not going to line up then. And then it has already been glued. So this is the exhaust. And you can see, wow, we have a substantial issue there. So these headers obviously do not rest against the block after they are installed. Quite the opposite, actually. They need to be pretty far out spaced. Had I not done this little extra step, I would have never known that. So now the question becomes, how do you get them all to stay just like that? And I'm hoping that this header will just rest on this transmission. Nope. I was hoping. Hey, look at this. Another use for the 9-step sanding sponges. We can rest the header on the sanding sponge while the glue cures for this. Nope, I need a little bit more. So it'll be, you know, this hobby is all about ingenuity, right? So it'll be a sanding sponge and a tweezer, which I can slide, and it gets bigger. So this is another use for the tweezers, as a part holder. And the tweezers work great in that role because they are at an angle, a wedge, kind of, sort of. So you can figure out what height you need by sliding the tweezer. It gets a little taller. And that works very well. And all I have to do is get it once. There it is. You know, once you get it, don't touch it. That's it. It's done. Don't touch it. And so I'm looking here, and I can see that and there it is. I touched it. See? You shouldn't have touched it. But the header isn't fully seated in the block. And I want the header fully seated. Ah, there we go. Now the header is fully in its little tab. I hope my big head isn't in the way. There we go. And the header is seated in the tabs. It looks good. The exhaust is in position. That is very good. So now we just let this sit for a little while. I had it and then it went away. Let's see here. And I'm going to show you all this footage. This is how you build a model. You run into little things like this. Patience testers. And there it is. So I think it is just leaning a little bit too far to the one side. So I'm going to move it a little bit over there. And I'm going to let it cure just like that. And then we'll come back. Okay, we're going to continue now. This is now cured and looks good. And will match up with the exhaust, we now know. So I have attached the belt, I have attached the headers. I still need to attach the coolant crossover, which is done in a dull silver. And I can see the attachment points on the sides of those intake runners. So let's get a little bit of glue going here. Right there and right there. A little messy with the glue there, but I don't think it'll matter. Ah, so it doesn't like... It doesn't appear to like the location of the power steering pump. So we're going to have to do a little engineering here. Oh, there we go. I just pushed the power steering pump a little bit wide, and now it fits. So it was just off just a little tiny bit, that power steering pump. And now it fits perfectly and looks good. Look at that. I like that I did that in a steel as opposed to an aluminum, like the engine. So there's a little contrasting metal going on there, which I like. So then that leaves the only thing that is left is this guy right here, who has to attach like so. That goes there. And that attaches to that pipe right there. So now getting this to line up is a little tricky. I'll be honest. This part does not seem to fit. But that is where we start doing some modifications. That's the model building part of this, not model assembly. So what it appears to be is it appears that this link here is a little bit too long, because what needs to happen is that needs to go on there. Or I am quite possibly just putting it in the wrong place. But based on this diagram, and I don't know how much I want to base everything off of this diagram, this does appear to come down at an angle. Fairly straight to begin with, but then comes down at an angle. And then this disappears behind the pulley system. But it can't get far enough over to attach. So what I'm going to experiment with is I'm going to experiment with cutting this, because it disappears behind, and I'm going to save that piece right there in case I need to reglue it. But because it disappears behind that thing anyway, Oh, and that isn't going to matter because it's actually the entire thing, the location that is causing the problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this aside for now, this part, and I'm going to attach it when we attach the radiator assembly to the engine. So I'm going to set it right over here. And when we get to that step, I'll put that in, because then I'll have the radiator assembly. I'll know the exact distances, and maybe we'll make a different part out of something else, like a flexible rubber line that I can, you know, move and flex and bend. So so let's move on to the next step 5. I'll get the parts out here. Step 5, we need the chassis, and we need the front suspension, which is right here. And then for step 6, we need the rear end, which is right there. And then we need the 2 little suspension sides, left and right. And somewhere there is a control rod right here. And I love that the instructions have the name of every single part. We also need the drive shaft we need. And so there's the drive shaft. So now we have everything out to get us up to that step where we install the engine into the chassis. So let's see if we can make this happen. Here is the radiators. Put those over there. Now let's see if we can make this happen, shall we? So the front suspension goes here. This stays all black. And that simply attaches on to these little access points right here, which is fantastic and exactly what we want. So I will just apply a little bit of glue here, a little bit of glue here. And this is a primer on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sand off this paint a little bit and attach this and get a better glue bond, because that primer will come off a little bit. And we'll get some plastic to plastic going on there. So that needs to be held in place a little bit. So I'm going to grab a couple of clamps, put some clamps on there. Let that glue cure. Here we go. Let that glue cure good while we are gluing the back. So we have this part here, which goes like this. And then we separately have this guy who glues into the little hole right there. And then comes around and goes under and attaches there. So let's, that looks like it's going to fit okay. So let's put a little dot of glue there. There we go. And there's that. That looks nice with the different metal color, the metallic color and the black. That's a nice look. So now that we have that going for us here, we need these parts. So this has to angle forward, and the shock goes on the inside. And this goes through that hole. But it needs to go inward more. So it would appear that these need to go on before this. They don't give you an order of steps. So I'm going to put this on first. Oh yes, I see, and it locks into place like so. And I think that this little tab here has to go inside there. Or maybe that's it right there. You see how that lines up? Yeah, that lines up just like that. So that goes like that. And this one will go like this. Little tricky, little tricky. You just gotta figure it out. There we go. So this top notch part goes in there like that. Oh, and then I see where this part actually ends up going. Yes, I do. And I'll get some glue on all of this in a second after I get it set. So this doesn't seem to want to cooperate with me because these are not going in far enough because of these little ends. This isn't fitting in. So I need to bend this out a little bit. And this is not uncommon with these older kits. Do have to bend a couple of parts here and there and everywhere. I just need to be, they need to be closer by just a little bit. Because it's not going in all the way. Oh, I see what it is. There is a piece of flash that I failed to identify here and here. That is not part of the part. So we need to get rid of those. And then these will fit together perfectly. How do you like that? Little pieces of flash that I didn't identify. It happens. We live and learn. So now this will go all the way in, hopefully. Oh, yeah. Yep. Now she's working. So now these parts will go all the way in, the way they're supposed to. And that will go and lock into place, just like that. Perfect. And then I will glue this after with some of my Tamiya Extra Thin. Tamiya Extra Thin really excels at this particular type of gluing. And then this will go there, there, and there. And again, what told me that I had the flash is this part wasn't fitting. So then you go back and you say, okay, well, why isn't this part fitting? And if you answer that question, why it isn't fitting, you will most likely reveal the problem, another problem, a problem elsewhere as well. So that is like that, and that is perfect. That looks great. So now what needs to happen is I do need to get some glue in here. And I need to... So the rear end here I have done some work on. Or I am continuing to do some work on, we'll say. This needs to be glued. And I unfortunately got called away. So, the glue that was in the tip appears to have gone hard on me. So we'll take our little lighter. And now the glue that was clogging that tip is now gone. Do not try that at home. But if your metal tip gets clogged, something you can't do with those plastic tips, obviously. But if your metal tip gets clogged, that is how you unclog it. And then the glue is now free-flowing yet again. I'm not going to clamp it. I'm just going to hold that there for a minute until it sets up. There we go. So the rear end is ready to be installed in the car, which is good. And this goes in like this. And then there are several attachment points along there, along there. The bottom has 2 holes as well. You line them all up and slot them in, and that should set the rear end up very nicely. And then we put the drive shaft in, and we'll be ready to attach the motor. So now I'm just going to go and see here if I can put those 2 square posts in, and then the round posts, and there it is. It is installed. So now I was able to successfully install that from the bottom, so then I can glue from the top. I've got the slots here, so we'll just put some glue in. There we go. And there we go. The capillary action will suck the glue in. And that is in. The rear end is installed. I'm debating whether or not I want to clamp it. I think that my normal clamps would put too much pressure on it, because I don't think they go quite large enough. No, not really. So I can use a couple of my Burma assemblers. These are a nice clamp. They're not made anymore. They're hard to find. Every time I see them, I buy them, because you can't find them anymore. Burma assemblers, they were called, something like that. But they do a nice job of. They're adjustable, how much pressure you put on by how hard you squeeze it, and they're fairly easy to use most of the time. And you can just put a little bit of pressure on it, and it doesn't go crazy. And there's that. So we're gonna let that cure. And then we'll come back and we'll prepare to install the engine and the drive shaft. That's going to wrap up video number 6 in the AMT Corvette ZR1 video series. Come on back next week. We'll get that engine in there and see if we can get that radiator hose in as well. Don't forget to visit me on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, all as Angelo's Workbench. Like, comment, share, subscribe, please and thank you. Always helps the channel. Also, if you have any questions or comments, please send those to me. I'd love to hear from you. I look forward to seeing you all next week.